Wait. Listen. Can you hear it? Can you tell what's happening? Wait, what? What happened? What are the bees saying? Well, just keep listening to the podcast because our guests today are working to change the way you'll listen to your bees forever. Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast, your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. As we're all thinking ahead to spring, it's a good time to think about Honeybee Nutrition. Your honeybees may be malnourished after what it was a pretty rough winter. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. So with spring approaching, now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Hey, Kim, I'm looking forward to this show. You know, I picked up the latest copy of Bee Culture, and there on page 36, I think, is a full discussion about the Bee Guru app and Dr. Bromenshenk's work. So I'm excited about this podcast.
Yeah, when he approached me a bit ago about getting this into the issue this month, I just bees talking to bees and bees talking to beekeepers. It was more than I couldn't wait to get it read. So we got it in a hurry. If you've seen the issue, he really did a good job with the graphics. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Jeff, Dr. Jerry Bromenshenk. He's with the University of Montana. He works with a master beekeeper program out there. He's got a bunch of other projects, research contract projects going on. Jerry, welcome to the program. And who's that with you right there?
Hi, Kim. Well, my associate here is Dr. David Firth. I'm going to let him introduce himself to you.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Kim. This is David Firth. I'm a professor of Management Information Systems in the College of Business at the University of Montana here in Missoula, Montana. And I work with Jerry and Colin and the other bee guys here at the University of Montana and at Bee Alert Technology. And I'm the business manager and also responsible for helping us get this amazing technology put onto smartphones so we can get it into beekeepers' hands.
Very
well,
cool. I've
had a good chance. I've read the article and a little bit more about this program. For our listeners, the title of the article is Decoding the Songs of Bees. And Jerry, I don't think you could have picked a better title, The Songs of Bees. How appropriate. Tell me what's going on with this article and your research.
Okay, Kim. Well, any beekeeper who has kept bees for very long, if they've got a halfway decent ear for bee sounds, can tell when a colony is queenless or not. I imagine you can do that.
Most of the time.
Well, and that varies because it certainly varies by experience, but it also varies by the acuity of the hearing. Bee sounds are actually far more complex than we ever guessed, but the notion of hearing a queenless colony that kind of has a hollow, almost echoing sound right after it becomes queenless, that sound eventually goes away after a few days. But that's something that beekeepers have heard. Beekeepers are also able to pick up on the piping of a queen. I mean, once you hear a queen piping, it's like a sound you've never heard before. But there's other people. We're not the first to look at bee sounds. So I'll give you a little history here so that you kind of get the feel of what we're trying to do. Eddie Woods in the UK back in the 60s, early 70s was a sound engineer who had a great ear. And he could hear when his colonies were going to swarm. And he eventually decided it was a shift in the frequencies of the sounds that bees were producing. And he came up with a suitcase-sized system to record bee sounds, patented it, called it the Apodictor, and sold a couple hundred of them, as I understand. But that's one of those things where most of us don't have his knowledge, don't have the fine-tuned hearing that he had. More recently, when I first got started, I knew Howard Kerr down at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and he was an engineer who kept bees. And frankly, I think Howard wanted an excuse to be able to keep bees on the national laboratory land. So he started doing some work on Africanized bees, rationalizing that because the African bee tends to be slightly smaller than the European bee, that the thorax, which acts as a spring, would be slightly different, and that maybe there'd be a difference in the wing beat frequency of an African bee versus, or Africanized bee versus the European. And he even built a little gizmo that basically was a little handle with a clear capsule on top and 3 indicator lights. And he'd grab a bee in the air and put in these little capsule, pop the capsule onto the wand, hold it up to the sun. The bee would fly to the sun, and the red, yellow, green lights would come on to indicate whether it was on the Africanized side of the spectrum or the European. The only problem he had was it wasn't very good at the in-betweens, and since they're all hybrids, that didn't quite work out the way they had hoped. So we've got one more step on this, is that more recently, companies like Arnian, having heard what we have done and so on, added microphones to some of their scale hive systems they've got. And they've been looking at kind of topological or basically 3-dimensional graphs of sounds. And they also say that they can tell when a colony is going to swarm. So I'll give you that background of, real world examples of people who have used bee sound before simply by the hearing. And one that I shouldn't forget is Jim Bach, who was a long-term apicultural inspector in the state of Washington. He was there when varroa mites first showed up in Washington bee. And Jim claimed that he could walk into an apiary and tell whether it had mites or not, simply because he thought there was an increase in the amplitude of the sound. And he even tried using decibel meters to see whether or not he could reliably tell the difference. He couldn't, but he knew he could perceive something. So that's kind of a little bit of the background of humans interacting with bees and sound. If we fast forward a bit, back in the late 1900s, early 2000s, we were doing a lot of work for the U.S. military. And right after one of the sarin gas attacks on subways, the military came to us and said, could you use your honeybee like a canary, the miner's canary, where in the case of the canary stops singing or falls over dead, and you get out of the mine in a hurry. And part of the rationale was that bees have a really tiny body size compared to us, but they're susceptible to the same type of neurotoxins. And so they were hoping that because of the effective dose of the release of poison gas to a tiny bee relative to our size, that maybe we could get a 15-minute warning that somebody had released a cloud of poison. Well, we failed in a sense because we weren't able to detect it in 15 minutes. We detected it in 15 seconds. And not only that, but we found that the sounds that the bees produce changed in ways that we could actually determine, in many cases, the actual category of chemical that had been used. And that amazed all of us. As some of my chemist colleagues tend to say, it's GC mass spec using the honeybee, a living instrument.
When they are doing those experiments, especially with the sarin gases or different poisons and such, how many bees does it take to find the change or detect a change? Is it a single bee? Is it 5 bees, 10 bees, 100 bees, 1,000 bees?
Okay, that's a good question. And although we can, on a benchtop, do assays for perception and so on using single bees, for simplicity, for stability of the system, we prefer to work with whole intact colonies. So we're actually using the colony level, the superorganism level signals that we get. And we found that not only for sound, but for some of the olfactory work we do, that this may sound counterintuitive, but the bees are more reliable and have lower levels of detection when they're free flying and working as a group in their hive than as individual or small groups of bees on the bench top. So there's a completely different dynamic in whole colony.
Well, I would think, I'm going to interrupt you for a second here, Jerry. I think actually, as you explain it, that makes perfect sense, because you used the term superorganism, and with 4 bees in a test tube, you don't have that. You don't have that level of interaction. You don't have that as nearly as many inputs, transferring information from this part of the colony to that part of the colony. So I think it makes sense. It's a good analogy.
Well, that's kind of what we concluded too. The superorganism trumps what the small groups do. And as a research scientist, looking at even simple things like pesticide assays and so on a benchtop, we know that even a cage of bees, if it doesn't have at least 30 bees, has no group dynamic at all. So, and everything in their evolution is that this superorganism adapts and makes decisions and changes its behavior minute by minute, second by second as a whole. So it's, in a sense, if you think about bees in a colony, they're almost like cells in a body. And we're not always aware of what all is going on inside of our bodies, but we do know, some things are reflexive responses and some things are ones that we intend to do, but we don't control all of it. And I think the same type of thing occurs in the bee colony.
That makes perfect sense.
It does.
So you're the research you got, the article that we've got here, the Songs of Bees. What have you discovered, and how can we use that information?
Okay, well, the first discovery, as I said, was that we got these really rapid responses to harmful chemicals that are very reliable, down to the point that we could actually tell the type of chemical. But then the obvious question was, well, what would a thick colony sound like? And so we started looking first at things that every beekeeper is aware of. You really want to have a healthy queen in that colony that's laying. Could you tell the difference between a colony that had a queen and didn't have a queen? And the answer was yes. And then the bee inspectors in places like the East Coast, especially down in Florida, where you got lots of beekeepers, but we got lots and lots of people, and they also have an incursion of Africanized bees. Well, they don't want to make a mistake on ignoring a colony in somebody's backyard that's actually fully African or Africanized and posed a threat. But on the other hand, they don't want to dispose of those colonies if they're European and they just happen to have a bad day when somebody came by. So we asked the question, could we determine the difference between Africanized bees and European? And we worked with the bee inspectors in Florida because they quarantine suspect colonies and then send in for lab tests. We got 98% discrimination between Africanized bees and European bees. So that was pretty surprising. But later we found out that there is even some more subtle but slight differences between the different races of bees. The carniolan bee sounds a little bit different than an Italian colony. Not so much that it offsets the pests and diseases that we wanted to discriminate. So as we move forward, we looked at varroa mites. And not surprisingly, to me at least, bees complained about having varroa mites. And if you could put yourself on the place of a bee and there's mites biting you, I might suspect that you get a little cranky too. So that made sense. What we didn't expect is we could actually grade the level of infestation from low, medium to high.
Can you tell, or do you know, is that coming from the wing noise? Is that coming from piping? No, I won't say piping because it has a specific definition, but is that coming, what type of noise are you monitoring? Is that the rustling? Is it a vocalization? Is it a respiration?
That's a good question. And I don't have a complete answer for you. But what I can say is that whereas there are some others looking at acoustics, and they tend to look at something very specific, like certain frequencies. That's why we use artificial intelligence, because we're looking for complex patterns that are well beyond my ability to hear or any human being. I mean, it's the type of things we do, but we hear amplitudes and we hear frequencies and we hear shifts, and it all comes together and it becomes like an acoustic fingerprint. And each of these variables has a different acoustic fingerprint in the context of the colony as a whole.
Sounds almost like a symphony going on in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does.
good analogy.
Well,
And-
then, so you've got this how do I put it? Complex source of sounds coming out. You mentioned artificial intelligence, so you're monitoring this from outside the hive. How does that work?
So what we do, this is David. So what we do is we've been able to, we've had advances in technology. And so what we found is that we now have very high-end microphones. And so what we've been able to do is reach out to our colleagues around the world that have problems with hives, and we send them a sophisticated audio recording package that they can put the microphone into the hive entrance, and they can record the sounds of infested bees or infected bees or pested bees, whichever one you want. And because they're professionals, they know exactly what's wrong with those particular bees. And they know that they've only got one thing wrong with them and not several things wrong with them. So we can get a very clean signal. And then we have that inside our app. And then what we do is the app, you just press a big red button, you place it in the hive entrance, it listens to the beehive for 30 seconds, the bees in the hive, 30 seconds. And then what it does is it uses artificial intelligence to compare what it just heard with our database of different sounds. And it makes a match or a lack of match between what it's just heard and what we have inside the app, the sounds inside the app. That's how the artificial intelligence works. It listens and then does a comparison to what we have stored in there. And that's actually what makes the app really unique, is that proprietary and very difficult to get, frankly, set of sounds of sick bees on very specific issues inside our app.
So you're saying that you could actually, you don't even need to be connected to the internet at that point. The app records it and compares it locally. Is there a time when it needs to share information with the cloud when it gets back into data connection?
No, that's a great question. No, the app will work completely off the wireless network or even off any data network. It will just work right there on its own. What we are looking for, though, is we're a group of citizen scientists ourselves. And so we do recognize that, this app is not perfect. It's great. And what we're looking for is people to use the app, for our app to do its work with its artificial intelligence, and then for our citizen scientists out there using the app to do comparisons between what our app is saying and what they're seeing. And then when you are on a good network, a wireless network or a data network, that information can be sent back to us so we can improve how this app works.
So if I can interject for a moment, we know on refrigerator-sized computers and high-end digital recorders that we get 86 to 98% accuracy. But when we move of identification for various variables, but when we move to phones, we're on hardware that we don't have that much control over. We don't know what quality sound card they have. We don't know what quality microphone they have. So we know that at least the higher end iPhones and Androids seem to be doing a pretty good job, but they probably color those audio signals a little bit from the reference ones we have. So initially, we don't expect our app in the hands of users with phones of unknown brands and quality and so on that is going to rise to the level that we have with our high-end equipment. But that's where the citizen science comes in, because let's say you stick the thing in and it says your colony is queenless. And then you go to the next step, which allows you with a quick drop-down menu to tick off whether it was or was not queenless. And you say, it said it was queenless, but it's got a queen. Doesn't work. Well, that really isn't important in the first steps here, because that's what we need to know. So if it doesn't work, you send us that recording, and we put it in a bucket of recordings that didn't work, got it wrong. And if it does work and nail it and really nailed it, then we put those in recordings into another bucket. And then our AI guru, Robert Seckham, sits down and retrains the app, and it gets better. And so that's where we're at the moment. We really need to get this out, get people using it. And the ones where it fails are just as important to us as the ones that work, because what's different from most is that our systems learn. And I'll let David talk to you a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so our systems learn, and it's all running on different equipment. And another thing we're expecting as well is that bees have regional accents. So you might be able to catch my English accent here a little bit. We actually expect bees to have regional accents. And so we want to get the users of our app using the app and letting us know, and to enable us to train our artificial intelligence for a Southern accent from a Pacific Northwest bee, from a New York bee, or from a New Zealand bee or a Chilean bee. And so we do know that there's going to be regional variations in sound.
So you've got bees with accents and machines with dialects trying to put them all together and tell you a story. That is pretty incredible.
Yes, it is. It really is. And I guess that the third part of the technology is we now have smartphones, in our pocket that have more computing power than was put up on, the Space Shuttle Challenger, or even a space shuttle, or a space rocket from just 2 or 3 years ago. We have that computing power in our pocket, and that allows our artificial intelligence to get this job done very quickly. I mean, it really runs through and does the work. You do a 30-second scan, and certainly on the higher end phones that Jerry and I use, I have an iPhone 6. It gets the work of the artificial intelligence done is in about 20, 30 seconds.
Wow.
Actually, he's got a 6, so I've got an Android 8. It's 12 seconds.
12 seconds.
And my wife has a 9, but I haven't checked it out yet.
So you guys
but
are
that's where the
clocking contest.
Yeah, well, that's really important, because that's part of the reason that I failed at my retirement. I, in theory, have been retired for 7 years. But 7 years ago, it took 20 minutes to run the analysis on any phone or tablet we've got. And around 2017, that suddenly changed on the higher end phones. I know they had the capability a bit earlier, but it came to market about then, when iPhone and Android added facial recognition as a security measure. And that takes really fast processing capability and some pretty significant storage. And the moment that they added facial recognition, that's basically the visual equivalent of our audio systems. It would run our audio systems, and we were off to the races. And that's why 2 years ago, we suddenly said, we can finally bring this to market, because we've got phones that are good enough to do it. Yep.
So regarding technology, and one of the things that is kind of really intriguing is the cell phones, everything's geared around human hearing. So most microphones that I'm aware of, or at least for voice microphones, have the 20 megahertz to 20 gigahertz or something. I can't remember. There's a range for the human hearing. So I assume, I don't know, the iPhones and the Android phones, they're all tuned to that parameter. What sounds are we missing on the either side of those frequencies that we're just not picking up? Have you been able to look into that much more?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. And we had the same concern too. So our high-end acoustic recording equipment that we use, of course, has a full range. And we were very aware that the phones, as you just said, are set to a different human voice range. And so that's why it's taken us, and I Jerry said 2017, but we didn't release this until, May 1st of this year. And part of that is we wanted to get out into the field with a version on our own phones and make sure that it was doing a decent job listening to bees and giving a result. And so, for instance, last summer in October, I donned a bee suit, and Jerry has a set of hives out at the Fort Missoula here, University of Montana hives and colonies. And one of those had foul brood, and he didn't let me know which one it was. I donned my bee suit, put my phone in, I think it was 19 different colonies, and certainly within about 40 seconds of hitting the right one, I could tell exactly which colony out there had foul brood. And that's when we knew that despite the restriction potentially on the range that these phones have, that we were still getting great results.
That's great.
We did not know that until we actually put our technology in our app on a phone to make sure that it worked.
Tim, would you have expected bees to change their sounds when they had American foul brood?
I wouldn't, no and yes. No, I hadn't thought about it until you pointed it out in this article and in discussions with you. And the minute you said it, of course, the light bulb goes off and you go, well, of course. And I'm guessing that what you're doing is picking up some tiny percent of the communication going on in that superorganism. They're probably talking about the weather and what they saw on television last night and what the queen is doing and what the drones are up to. I'm guessing that you have just pricked the peak of what's going on in those boxes.
That's exactly what we think. Until fairly recently, we didn't think that bees had what we would call hearing. We knew they picked up vibrations, and maybe it's a matter of semantics, but I don't think we thought that the sounds they were producing had much information conveyed amongst themselves. I'm beginning to think now that we have been missing a big part of the picture. And again, if you anthropomorphize it as the thing is we got sick bees down here in the nursery. We need them help.
Yep. You know what else I see going on here? I can see not only that is just beginning to talk to bees is what you're doing, but just for lack of a better term, entertainment. I see the contest between Hal and the best beekeeper looking at colonies, trying to figure out what's wrong with them. Hal with the microphone and the beekeeper with 40 years experience, and who's going to win. And we know right now who's going to win.
So initial stages will have some stumbles, and that's why we need some funding to actually get it out and use, get recordings back, start fine-tuning it. If you're as old as we are,
I am.
You and I, Tim, you're younger than I am, I think. But you remember when Dragon Speaking Naturally, I think it's now Nuance Company, first came out with computer ability to both generate speech and to understand it. It wasn't very good, but with time it got better and better. And now it actually has you, if you're like David from England or Scott who works with me from Georgia, you can pick a version of Dragon that has, as Scott says, the Georgia shift, and it dials right in. And I've got Alexa all through my house at the moment, and I wander through my house and say, Alexa, what's the temperature? Set me an alarm. What's on the television tonight? And it responds to me, and it's getting better and better all the time, or Siri, or all these things in the phone. Now, most of those, because they got huge amounts of research behind them and a lot of information flowing through them, have gotten to the point that they do some learning on the device. We're still to the point that we need to have the recordings and so on come to us in the cloud. Then our experts will run them back through and retrain and improve it and then send out the upgrades.
Yeah, we do actually see in future that there might be a New Zealand version of the app. There might be, a Brazilian version of the app, a Chilean version of the app, maybe a, Southeastern American version of the app as well. But I do want to come back to this notion, by the way. I detected foul brood on a smartphone app, and I did it within 45 seconds. And there is no way, I'm nowhere near as good a beekeeper as any of you guys, by a long shot. And, I found American foul broods with a smartphone app. So this is a bit of a game. If you ask me, this is a bit of a game changer for kind of novice and intermediate beekeepers, actually. Not as much you master beekeepers.
Well, it isn't the key point there is that you didn't even open the hive.
Oh, exactly. No, I did not.
That's right.
Yeah, I did not use smoke, and I did not pop the hive at all. I just had my bee suit, and I had my phone, and that was it.
Yeah, you didn't open the hive. You didn't get your equipment dirty. You didn't expose anybody else to robbing of a ABF hive or AFB hive. So, anyways, that's cool. That's great.
So, Jeff, you asked an interesting question about the quality of the equipment. Mm-hmm. One, there is another option, and that is external microphones. And if I was a commercial beekeeper, I don't think I'd want to run around and stick my phone in 10,000 colonies. I'd want a wand, or essentially a microphone, just to slide in. And we can do that. And that's obviously a fallback if we find that it's only the very best phones that give us good results. And that's, again, why we need to do this kind of next step. We're hoping that almost any phone will do it, because the idea is that any beekeeper anywhere in the world stick their phone in, get a report, upload it to the cloud, and we get an immediate alert of problems as they emerge. And David here can talk to you about how you can set up visualization software so you could put out maps immediately in real time of, gee, Verolomite just showed up in big numbers in North Dakota, and there's a hotspot down here in California. And then you could watch it like the measles epidemic that CDC is watching, and so on.
I see something else going on here, and I want to get real quick, Jerry, to your funding thing. But before that, I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking suddenly I just got a queen from Hawaii, and I put it into a colony of bees that were originally from Georgia and now have been in Ohio for 3 or 4 generations. Do those bees even talk to each other? Do the access interfere? Can that queen talk to those? So I can see where all sorts of things can be learned using this technology. But first, tell me about this crowdfunding thing that you've got going so people can help out.
So what we're doing with a bee health guru is we're doing something called a Kickstarter. And a Kickstarter is a way to crowdfund in order to raise money. And so if you go to Kickstarter.com and search for Bee Health Guru, what you'll do is you'll come up with our Kickstarter, and it's live right now. And what it allows you to do is to pledge to help us out and help us push this app across the finish line, help us pay for the processing of the information that we're going to gather from these people using the app. And so there's different pledge levels. There's a $10, I just want to help keep healthy bees. There's a $20 or more, which is I want to help keep bees healthy, but we will also send you a beta version of the app. And then there's we really love to help you guys out a lot, a $50 version. And we will add your name to the app. And we've also got an online community. So it's actually this is a piece that we've not chatted about yet. We built into our Bee Health Guru smartphone app is an online community. So if you've got questions, if you take some photos of what you're seeing in your hive, we want you to access this online community and ask questions about it. We want, other beekeepers to answer those questions. We want to build a community around bee health. And so that's what we're looking for on our Kickstarter. And again, if you go to Kickstarter.com and look up Bee Health Guru, it's May 2nd today, and it's going to run for another 28 days. We're currently about 20% funded, which is pretty decent, actually. It's only been a day and a half. And we're looking for people who want to help really make this app something amazing that all beekeepers can use just to help them understand and listen to their bees and keep healthy bees.
So we will have that link to the Kickstarter on our show notes so that people, if you the listeners didn't get a chance to follow all of that in the podcast, it'll be in the show notes. You can just click on the link and contribute to the Kickstarter. And just to let you guys know that the Beekeeping Today podcast is a founding contributor or pledge to the Kickstarter program. So we got
thank you.
Got money in there for you. So love to see this be successful.
Actually, Jeff, before we started, I talked to the folks here at Bee Culture, and we got a $250 challenge to any bee supply to every bee supply company in the U.S. We'll put in $250, and we challenge every company to match that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, the link to the Kickstarter program is will be on the podcast page. It's also in the magazine article. We encourage everybody listening and everybody who is listening that knows somebody that can help out on this. I want to know. I want to see a dictionary of bee words. That's what I want to see, Jerry.
Dictionary.
Starting with buzz.
A Rosetta Stone for the beehive.
That's what I want.
Rosetta Stone, my goodness.
Wouldn't that be wild? And
that's what we're aiming for here.
Hey, Kim, if a bee supply company wants to pick you up on the challenge, do they have to do anything special to be listed as on the challenge, or they just need to go contribute and tweet and kick it about?
At the end of the month, we will do something in our magazine acknowledging everybody that helped out. We will give you a pat on the back and a kudos and what is it you said you would send, Jerry, to everybody who did more than some amount of money?
Yeah, so we will definitely send everyone a version of the app so they can download it and put it on their phone and try it out.
There you go. They'll get that. They'll get recognition in the magazine, and they will help beekeeping move forward.
And on that challenge, we'll also make a special point to recognize them on a future podcast too. So that'll be good. Fantastic.
So I'm going to punch out, guys.
David, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, David. Nice meeting you.
Thank you very much, guys. It's been really good.
Okay, so one final thought on the this accent dialect thing. We actually know of one. We've been working in New Zealand, and Frank, Tim, you know Frank Lindsay?
Yes.
From New Zealand, I think?
Yes.
Okay, well, Frank has been an early adopter. And Frank ran out and checked his hives, and it came back and it said they were Africanized. But he went over to his neighbor, and it didn't see that.
Amazing.
Anyway, Frank knew that his bees were different than our bees. But if you think about it, they probably have a little bit of a different genetic mix. They've also have a little bit different background in terms of pests and pathogens and so on. For example, they have AFB, but they don't have EFB. And so we've come to the conclusion that New Zealand bees have, in terms of bees, have just as much of an accent difference as we do speaking English. And we've gotten some recordings also from Australia, and they're different yet. So the geographical differences we see across North America are fairly slight. We can actually tell, to say that oftentimes what race is involved, whether it's Italian or Caucasian or Carniolan. There's a bigger jump when we go to New Zealand, and yet a different jump when we go to Australia. And one of the New York wellness folks that I met last summer routinely goes back and forth to the UK. So when he tried our app in New York, it said there's a slight chance that you have some Africanized bees here, but it's like on a scale 1 to 100, 1, 2, 3%. That's really not, that's just noise in terms of the system. But when you went to England, there was 0 hits on any chance that it might be Africanized. So we know they've got accent or dialect.
I think part of that, Jerry, must be because they've been listening to the beekeepers that take care of them all along. So the bees in New Zealand are going to.
That might be. But should we be surprised? I mean, we know bird species do that in geographical regions and so on. So the good news is most of our original testing was done in North America, the U.S., and Canada. There, the differences are far less. So, and since we know we can train it, New Zealand is one group that we've been talking to a lot. And hopefully, if we get the funding on this and we get people down in New Zealand buying in on it so they can raise some money and so on, we can train it for the New Zealand bees or the Oz bees and so on. And so,
and that's the same for any beekeeper around the world, right? I mean, This isn't limited to North America, New Zealand, and Australia. This is any beekeeper around the world this Kickstarter is available to. And the more information that you get for your AI system, the better you can train the application.
Yeah, absolutely.
The better it is for everybody.
And to take that a step further, the Africanized bee that I talk about, all the bees that are testy or the supposed killer bees in the U.S. are a hybrid. But if we go to South Africa, and in our classes, we have had some South Africans participate. If they go out and get us a recording, we've got the source sound of African bees. And we can then use that in our training to make things even better.
Amazing.
That's really cool.
Amazing.
That is really cool.
And Kim, and Jeff, if you looked at our screenshots, I think there's about 4 or 5 clicks of buttons, and you've done the whole thing from end to end. We tried to keep that as simple as possible. We tried to keep the number of words down as small as possible. We tried to take the drop-down menus for inspection so that you do yes, no, or 1, 2, 3 rating. It won't take us very much to generate Spanish and Portuguese or Mediterranean or Arabic versions, what have you. All we need to have is a beekeeper that understands the terminology to sit down and work with us to translate it over, and it'll be an easy plug-in to the app.
Well, that'll be fun. This research will be really, really fun to see as it develops.
One of the detailed things we didn't get into is I see so many forums that come out and they ask for the beekeeper's name and address and things that beekeepers don't like to share and so on, and we're aware of that. So if we ever produce maps, we're not going to produce maps where they got pinpoints for your exact location, but we could say this county has a problem or so on. But in the meantime, since we do know or suspect that we might have quality of smartphones and tablets and so on entering into this issue, when you push the button to record, we automatically, in the background, without the beekeeper doing anything, we get the time, the date, the GPS location, the brand of the phone, and the operating system it's working on. And that's all done without the beekeeper doing anything.
Wow. So, Jerry, one of the things you just mentioned was that one of your master beekeeper students was in parts of Africa testing your audio equipment. And that brings up what the other reason that we came here today is I'd like to know more about your master beekeeping class. I haven't taken it. I know a lot of people that have. But tell me about it. Okay,
well, Kim, as you know, I'm a 40-some-year research scientist. Didn't spend a whole lot of time in the classroom except for seminars and special courses, but I both did bee research, and for 20-some years I ran statewide Department of energy-related education and research programs. So I'm not a traditional faculty member that spent a lot of time in the classroom. So in 2020, when I retired, the last thing I was thinking about was teaching when the commercial beekeepers in Montana approached me. And Montana is a very big agricultural part of the beekeeping community. The beekeepers in Montana run some 200,000 colonies of bees, and bee operations of 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 are not uncommon. In fact, if you don't have at least 3,500, they don't even really consider you to be a beekeeper. Those beekeepers came to me and said, after 2006 and all the concerns about bee declines and so on, the good news is we're seeing a big influx of new beekeepers. And between you and I, Kim, we both know that, I'm from agriculture to begin with. I came from dairy operation. A lot of the kids of farmers and ranchers and beekeepers don't want to do what Dad and Granddad did because it's too much work and it's all the way around the clock. And beekeepers are moving bees at night and so on. So there's more than one commercial beekeeper that when they want to retire, look around and their kids don't want to do it, their grandkids don't want to do it. They got to try to find somebody to buy them out. So if we get more beekeepers, and frankly, I think the bigger issue is not bee decline and loss of colony per se, but loss of beekeepers that we've had. And so the commercial beekeepers are really happy to see new beekeepers. Maybe they can sell out someday, or they can find employees or so on. But what they didn't like was how many of them had gone to the internet to sources of unknown background and expertise and were following these internet gurus that were, some of them know what they're talking about, and some of them have got some pretty wild ideas. And they said, we're a little afraid of the kind of information that's coming down from some of these sources. We want them to keep healthy bees. We want them to learn good beekeeping. You could do that. And would you do that? And so I thought about it a bit, and I figured, well, I guess, yeah, I'm retired, supposedly. There's no reason why I can't. Well, we got lucky. We had a new dean of the School of Extended and Lifelong Learning who had just come in. Before he was here, UoM's online courses were mostly traditional classes in college classes that were just made into a format that they could be accessed remotely. But what the new dean was into was modern ideas of education on internet platforms and public service, and it didn't have to be a traditional class. I mean, I'm from a liberal arts college. That's not where you might expect me, but I'm in the Division of Biological Sciences, the University of Montana, liberal arts, law school, pharmacy. The agricultural school is 200 miles away. So the issue here is we got a dean who was interested, and he had a whole bunch of talented media arts students, undergraduates and master's students in fine arts, who were looking for projects to practice their animation and their video skills on and so on. And he had experts in his own operation of the best ways to approach online education, which differs a lot from the standard classroom. To make a long story a little shorter, it took us 4 years, but each year we built a level, an apprentice level, a journeyman level, a master level. They're roughly on the kind of a format of master gardeners or master beekeeping like Eastern Apiculture Society. But we drill down a lot deeper, and we get into things like reading scientific literature, and we get into issues like understanding pesticides and pesticide terminology and assessing pesticide risks so that you can make wise choices in terms of what products are used, what you could tell a grower that I prefer you use this, not that. And then the master level, they actually have to do in 8 weeks a research project from end to end and write it up in a technical form. And as you know, Kim, you've published a couple of those already. So we've met the other mandate from the beekeepers that asked me to start developing this. One is you give them good information, and actually they wanted us to raise the bar, and that's what we're trying to do. So as far as I know, we're the only university that has this type of program that is fully accredited and ADA or American Disabilities compliant online beekeeping free-level course. And it took us 4 years to produce it. And when we first started, we didn't know if anybody would take it. And now we have the enviable problem of there are more people who want to take it than we have time, than we have personnel to teach it.
It's a good problem.
I can tell you, I've looked at it. It is. I've looked at it a couple times, and you know, if you're not in there in the bucket right away, to if you don't raise your hand fast enough, you can't get in the program. So it's a great problem to have.
Yeah, 2 years ago we finished the master level. It took us a year or more for each of the levels to develop in the way we did. We brought the content. The media students brought the creativity, the animations, and the videos. And the School of Education's educational specialists helped us build this from the ground up. And now that we've got all three levels up, now we can, we're moving on to other things. For example, my goal at the moment is I'm working on an online short course for veterinarians because of the FDA VFD Act directive that came out in January of 2017. That says you have to have a licensed veterinarian to prescribe antibiotics for use to treat foul broods and bacterial diseases.
And very few veterinarians, unless just by their own interest, got into beekeeping, have any background at all in beekeeping. And so many of them are reluctant to even step into that arena because they know they don't know much about bees. And I've seen some of the programs out there, and basically they've been patched together in a hurry. And so my next goal with this, my immediate goal, is to produce a really good training course for veterinarians where we demystify the process, help them be able to really identify these things, know what kinds of tests are available to them, and experience this whole thing of working with bees, and to do it safely. And that's what a lot of the quickly put together programs forget. They just say, oh, just run out and here's your bees and go do a check, and you can have the beekeeper pull through the frames and stuff. And that bothers me because, Kim, you know, you don't want to walk up to strong colonies or walk into the situation we have here where one of our commercial guys calls you in and you're in a stockpile yard of 10,000 bee colonies. That's a whole different world from one colony in the backyard.
A whole different world. You're exactly right.
So your retirement has been pretty peaceful then, it sounds like. Pretty restful.
Well, we just got our dean that really was great for promoting this retired yesterday, but they've got a new replacement in, and I'm really looking forward to working with her because she comes to us from Argentina. We all know that Argentina is a big bee country in South America. Better is her father and grandfather were beekeepers. So
perfect.
You know, I was a little worried when Roger left, but I'm really optimistic at the moment. But because she was coming in, I decided to do a quick summary. And so I'll just throw some numbers at you. We have reached every state and every province in Canada and 15 other countries.
That's pretty impressive.
We have had 820 people complete, and pass our apprentice level and get a certificate. 331 have completed the journeyman successfully. And as of 2 weeks ago, 152 have completed the third level, the master level, and every single one of those turned in a research project.
It's got to make your Montana people better off too, because there's a bigger group of people to draw from when I need somebody that can go out and look at a hive. Yeah.
And one of the things as a commercial guys, I mean, Canada has on and off has had programs for commercial beekeepers. We've not quite gone to the step of tailoring it job-wise, but what I do see among a lot of our commercial folks is if they can find employees locally, and we all know that a lot of them go to South America and even Africa just to get employees to do the work for them. But if they can source them locally, then the problem comes up with twofold. From the beekeeper's perspective, if they invest in a person that likely doesn't know anything about bees, get them somewhat trained up so they understand something about bees and so on, get trained up on the day-to-day how that beekeeper likes them to manage and work bees and so on. And about the time they get them well trained, somebody else makes them a better offer and a bunch of them bail and go work for somebody else. And the flip side of that one is some of these people get into it for a job and then say they really like it. And they would like to be the person that would advance, become, say, a regional manager, because a lot of these big operations have regions they have to cover, or maybe even become a partner or take over the business in the future. But they find that their mentor sometimes, and this is the outliers, this isn't everybody, but some of these folks don't want to train their employees given too many skills because they're worried that they'll go out and set up their own operation in competition.
Jerry, we're running against the clock here. I've been in bees for 3 years and I want to take your class. How do I get there?
Yeah, it just goes to the University of Montana. It's www.umt for University of Montana.edu/B. BEE.
Okay, and then I can sign up there?
You can sign up there. You'll get the schedules for the courses. You can You'll get the syllabus and so on.
And just a quick review. How long is it going to take me to get through your first level?
First one is about, we've been doing some tweaking, but between 6 and 8 weeks, I think, is what you commit for the first level. Then we'd like you to take, unless you can convince me that you've actually have had experience before, we'd like you to take a year or so to practice what you've learned and so on. The journeyman level is about a 9-week course, 8 to 9 week course, and the master level is a 9 to 10 week course. And when you come into these courses, we have a series of topics, whether it's anatomy or hive tools or honey production, whatever. Each of those topics opens in the syllabus. Each of those are more or less grouped as weekly topics. So on a Monday, the topic opens. By Tuesday, you're expected to have read it. And we start asking questions. And we teach as much by an interactive online. It's all text-based, but we ask questions. The students ask questions. Everybody shares information. You got to stay focused on the topic for that week. If it's anatomy, we don't care about what you did with your bees the last week for fun. We want you to focus on the anatomy type of thing. These are just like classroom in that sense. It's whatever that day's topic is where you want the questions and the focuses on. But everybody talks to everybody else, and about a third of the grade is on consistent participation and engagement in the course, so that you can't just work in the background. You've got to work in our courses. So if you want something just take for fun and just kind of lollygag and listen to it. So this is not the course for you.
I can see that.
Well, it sounds, the work behind it and the work that you put into it definitely shows why it's so successful.
It clearly appeals to people who want to go to the next step about what's generally available to them. And we're continually upgrading it each year. We look for outside instructors for some things. So Dr. Dale Hill in Illinois, who's the animal nutritionist who rewrote the chapter in the hive and the honeybee on nutrition, he's the instructor for that week when we get the honeybee nutrition, because that's out of my wheelhouse. And but Kim's right. They haven't slowed down yet. They fill up fast, and we'll have the dates, and you can get on a wait list to be notified. But you don't want to dilly-dally, because we often open them on the late afternoon, Friday afternoon, and it's not uncommon to be full by midnight.
Wow. So, Jeff, you're going to have that link available on the webpage for the podcast, and we will have it. Actually, we're putting out a buzz for several of the recent podcasts, so it'll be there also.
Okay, that's great. Wonderful, guys.
What did we miss, Jeff?
I think we're out of time, but this has been a great discussion. I'm really looking forward to the success of the Bee Guru app. As a contributor and pledge to the Kickstarter, it'll be fun to see it progress. We'll report about it on the podcast and have some updates.
And Jerry, I do want to review the first copy of the bee dictionary once you get it done.
Yeah, I'm anxious for it too. The part of the we've been waiting for the technology to get good enough that we could put it on a smartphone. We've had the capabilities since around 2010 or so, but everything was just too expensive or too clunky or so on. It wasn't until about 2017 when that barrier went away. And then we thought it would only be 90 days to put out our app, but with the testing we did and stuff like that, it took us 2 years, so we're a little behind.
We're on the ground floor. It's a good place to be. You've done the background work, and it looks like it's going to be exciting. Jerry, thank you, and definitely thank David when you see him again for his contribution here. Jeff, what do we got to sign off here real quick?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Oh, we'll keep in contact, and I appreciate your support and the opportunity today.
Good. Okay.
All right. We'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Jerry.
Thanks to both of you guys. It's been great.
Well, that was really fun. I mean, you tease me or you joke about me being the tech guy, but I guess I am. I enjoyed the whole thought of having taking my phone out of my pocket and sticking it in the front of the hive and saying, "Oh, everything's fine and dandy in this hive. Oh, wait, there's problems in this one," and not even having to open up the hive. Although I do like opening a hive, we all know that each time you open the hive, you disrupt their lives and you make things difficult. And they spend a day correcting everything you undid, everything you broke. So I'm really looking forward to the development of this app.
Well, I'll tell you, Jeff, I like I said, I've read the article. I've known Jerry for years, and we've talked about this on and off over time. And I thought I had an understanding of it. And listening to him today, he's just got the tip of the iceberg here. I'm really excited. I'm waiting for the dictionary of bee speak and be able to understand all of that's going on and the variables that are going on here. I mean, I mentioned the fact that bringing Georgia bees to Ohio, can they talk to each other? Who knows?
Who knew?
Yeah, exactly. So this is exciting to me, and I hope it's able to take off. I'll again throw out my $250 challenge to every bee supply company in the U.S. And if you do it, we'll notice you in the magazine when all of this is over, so we can get this project funded. And the other half of the show, Jeff, was Jerry's not only discovering things, he's teaching people how to use them.
Yeah.
And that Master Beekeeper program, he was right. Some of those Master Beekeepers are sending me their research projects and the results of them, and we're seeing the results of that information we wouldn't have had otherwise. So his program is working well. He's training people to be able to talk to his bees, and his bees are learning to talk to us. So I think we're going in the right direction.
I do too. And just thinking about all the research papers, looking around, looking for exposure, maybe we could have one or two of those folks on a future podcast talking about their research. That would be good.
Well, that'd be good. Good idea.
And right. I like that program.
A bunch of them out there.
I've been looking at Jerry's program for the last couple of years, and I just trying to carve out that time. I guess I could do it between midnight and 6 a.m.
Yeah, you got nothing better going, Jeff.
No, I need to retire is what I need to do. Well, that about wraps it up for this podcast. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download and stream the podcast. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. We want to thank this episode's sponsor, Global Patties. Global Patties is a family-operated business which has been operating for over 17 years. They manufacture protein supplements for honeybees. Check them out at www.globalpatties.com. And while you're there, give them a shout out for sponsoring this great program with Dr. Jerry Bromenshenk and Dr. David Firth. Also, feel free to leave us questions and comments at questions@beekeepingtodaypodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. We're hearing from beekeepers, and it's all been good so far, so keep it coming. And finally, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener. You're the reason why we're here. Isn't that right, Kim?
That's it in a nutshell, Jeff. It's a good show. Thank you. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks, Kim. Safe travels. Bye-bye.